Hello and welcome. My name is Sean Phillips, and I am here joined today alongside my two co-hosts of this incredible new political podcast, The Voice of Reason, Mr. Andrew Van Beber and Mr. Travis Kirkendall.
What's going on?
So, ladies and gentlemen, we are happy to bring you a new and refreshing experience to burst your bubble and hopefully open your eyes and ears. The whole point of this podcast is so that you guys can keep your mouths quiet or to yourselves whenever you're out and about at the bar. Drunk guy down there wants to talk politics with you. The old lady at Fellowship Hall decides she's got her opinion and wants to ramble on to you.
There you go.
Look, at the very least, we want to prevent you from being those people. All right. The whole point of this podcast is we plan on giving you a taste of different views, beliefs, and topics that maybe you've never would have actually gone out and listened to on your own. That's a big thing for us is we want to bring new experiences to places that might need it. Definitely locations that haven't really got outside views that really aren't their own. So we're here to burst your comfort zone. We're really kind of here to shake things up. We're going to have some good discussions, talk away, and hopefully not bore you too much. Each week, when you give a listen to The Voice of Reason, we want you to take time to reflect and challenge your own level of thinking. And truthfully, you can get as mad as you want listening to us talk. We're going to ramble on about all kinds of nonsense. But at the end of the day, you've already pressed play and you're stuck listening to us until you get to the end of your drive. So thank you so much for turning in to our very first episode. Please bear with us as we work out the kinks and all the bumps and bruises along the way. I promise. Like a good old bottle of wine, it'll get better with age. So first and foremost, Mr. Andrew Van Beber and Mr. Travis Kirkendall, how are you two today?
Great, man. What's going on? It's good to be here with you guys. Yeah. Looking forward to doing this for a long time, and I'm really excited about getting into this. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, and I gotta say, V, thanks for letting me be a part of this too. I mean, this was originally your idea, and it means a lot. So appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, perfect. So without further ado, the first episode of The Voice of Reason is going to focus on introductions. We want everyone to kind of get to know who you're going to be listening to. So throughout this show, when we bring you guys this podcast, we're going to be talking about different political views and different things that are happening around the world. And part of the reason why we came up with The Voice of Reason was actually Mr. Andrew Van Beber's idea. We really just want people to kind of see things from a perspective that they might not typically think about or they might not hear in their own direction and where they are in the world. People are different all over, and we really want to paint that picture. We have even though we are your three standard looking white guys you might run into at a microbrew, believe it or not, we do differ. We do differ in some of our political beliefs, religious beliefs, and just kind of what we do for fun and all that good stuff. So even though the chocolate might be white, it is still a pretty diverse flavor you're going to get here from us. So
there's a way of saying I didn't think of. Thank you.
Of course.
Chocolate. All right.
So what I want to do here is I'm going to let Andrew take it away, have him introduce himself, and let you guys get to know a little bit more about old big sexy Andrew Van Beber himself. So you take it away.
Well, thank you, Sean. And again, I want to thank everybody for giving us a listen. This was, and they're giving me too much credit because this was a joint brainchild between me and Sean. And as a history teacher, I've taught in the public school system for 24 years, both in Southeast Missouri and in Northeast Missouri. I want to explain just a few things about my position, my purpose, and what I see my goal as throughout this whole thing. I bind to no political party. I have conservative views and values mixed with a little moderate sprinklings in there. I have made myself open to the views of others, and that's developed over the 26 years or 24 years of my teaching. I strive to show empathy to the downtrodden, to those of wealth. I am a Christ follower. I am a Christian. I seek to spread the true faith and God's love to as many people as possible. I wish to change minds about who Jesus is and what he can do for people. As far as my purpose goes, I want to create open dialogue. Our country is more divisive now than ever. I was born in the 70s. I am a child of the 70s. I was born in 1974. I am 46 years old. And over the course of many years, I found out that we're, and I think it kind of started in the late 80s. We've gotten to the point where we don't listen to each other. We only shout. Um, Unity is a code word to some people as compliance and not as one that should be working together. We've lost the ideal of compromise. We've lost the ideals of agreeing to disagree. We refuse to see things from multiple points of view. The old saying goes, you have to walk a mile in a man's moccasins before you can really understand what he's getting at. And I think we've lost that art. We can't understand why they have the convictions they do. And so my purpose is to get us into that mindset. We don't always have to say my way's the right way. I'm right. You're wrong. I'm smart. You're stupid. It is being open-minded and observant of other people's what their beliefs are. And my goal is to create, as Sean said at the beginning, to create a forum of open discussion in areas of politics, society, religion, economics. I'd like to see open talk, no holds barred, not having to know all the answers, but willing to work toward the answers. And I think that's pretty much where I stand at on where I'd like to come from.
No, absolutely. And for those of you guys that are listening to us, one of the big things is a great reason why this is a good mashup of hosts that you're going to have on this show. A big reason is Andrew lives all the way out in a small town kind of vibe where we all grew up. So he's kind of in that zone where a lot of the political spectrum tends to lean a little bit right, and that's putting it very lightly. They're almost tripping over their ass, falling right, and that's all right. Now,
well, yes, but to be fair, that and to that end, that is the mindset that I was raised in. All of my brothers, we are all over the political spectrum, and I was raised that if it's not right, it's not right. If it's not the right wing, it's not right. If it's not, you got to, if it doesn't have the R in the parentheses at the end, it's not right. So yeah, that's part of where I come from. So.
Oh, for sure. And thankfully our other host, Travis Kirkendall, has rightfully so uprooted himself and planted himself down in the heart of downtown Chicago. So when we say that he's thrust himself into a diverse melting pot, it is more than boiling over when it comes to that great city. So definitely when it comes to not only people that are kind of on the way far out there, the political spectrum, he's definitely also going to run into individuals that he's not sure if they're just so far left or if they're on crack. And I'm excited that we're going to get that.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
So Travis, why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So for those who don't know me, my name's Travis. I went to school with Sean, and V was my history and government teacher. And ironically, a lot of the things that he preached about, not adhering to like a political party and keeping open-mindedness, that had a big impact on me. And I didn't really start paying attention to politics until I think the 2016 election. That was kind of eye-opening to me. I didn't really like any of the candidates in that election or this last one, honestly. But I started to see a lot of things, and that's when I really started to pay attention. And what this podcast is about, it really, when I first saw your idea about this, it really resonated with me. And we need to be able to have these conversations, and there's a lot of value. And maybe you and I don't agree, but that's coming together. That's kind of where your value is, when you have two differing reviews coming together and meeting in the middle. And that's not happening right now. You have the left, the right, Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal. There is no in between. It is I'm right, you're wrong. And that's a problem. And I think that is one of the many reasons why we are where we are at today. And so, that's my biggest motivation with this podcast, is that we can have these discussions. And yeah, we're not going to agree on everything, but at the end of the day, I'm not mad at you if you don't agree with me, and vice versa. And hopefully, these conversations, we can set an example for others and give them different point of views, like Sean pointed out. So that's really my goal, is to show people that you need to have an open mind and give them a point of view that they may not have seen before. A little more backstory on me. I was in the Army for 5 years, just got out back in September, and I'm living in the great Republican city of Chicago.
Oh God, we're already starting with the lies. Here we go.
Yeah, there's no Trump signs here. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely totally different from where I come from. Really different. But yeah, I got out of the Army. I'm now a tower climber, and I'm also going to school for welding here at UTI in Chicago. And hopefully I don't stay in Chicago. Let's put it that way. I am a little more on the conservative side, I think, but, I do consider myself an independent, and I try to look at both sides and kind of make my own opinion, do my own research, and yeah, that's kind of where I stand on the political spectrum.
Sean, if I could just for a second, you said something there, Travis, that really struck with me. Did you, and you obviously we're of two different generations here, but did you find it really weird that within the age of social media, how much people have disassociated themselves from each other because of their different views?
Oh, absolutely. We haven't talked about this yet, but I got rid of all my personal social media, and that was one of the reasons I got off, was just, seeing everybody just fighting and not listening to each other. It's a quote you always said, V. He's like, we're always hearing each other, but we're not listening to each other. Right. And, you see all these arguments and meme wars on Facebook and Instagram. And I think, social media is definitely one of the contributing factors to why we are where we are at today. 100%. That there's a Mike Tyson quote there. He's like, people get too off, or how's it go? They're too used to talking bad to each other without getting punched in the face for it. Something like that,
Right.
But
that,
yeah,
that was just something I was curious about. Just to say.
I think Mike Tyson used a lot different words when he said that quote.
I butchered the quote.
But I know what one you're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an issue.
Well, perfect.
It's definitely.
And I don't help as being an instigator in most of those social media.
Never.
Oh, yeah. You mean like? Are you talking about like this Sean right here? This Kansas City?
For those of you that can't see, that are just listening, I hate the Kansas City Chiefs. I could have another podcast specifically talking about that, but we are not going to mention that today. Tom Brady, thank you, our Lord and Savior, Tom Brady.
Oh, blasphemy!
The GOAT.
Well, no, yeah. Oh, you know it.
I had to go there just once. That's okay.
That's okay. It was on the table. You played your cards, and just like the Chiefs, you lost, and that's all right.
Oh, that's all right. That's okay. That's all right. I still love you. It's all right.
Exactly. So, I guess that leaves it to me. A little bit about myself. My name is Sean Phillips. I grew up in a small town. I was great friends. I graduated high school with Travis and Andy or Andrew. Mr. V was our history teacher.
Stop saying Andrew, by the way. I feel like I'm being scolded by my father in here.
I am your daddy. Mm-hmm. No, and so Andy was our teacher, and definitely during our time at high school was one of the most influential voices that we heard. And definitely, I can thankfully say Travis and I actually listen. Yeah. Many of the people where I'm from could probably tell you they probably thought of me as like a left-wing nut growing up. And then as soon as like I hit 17, 18, probably it completely flipped and everyone thought I was like this conservative, staunch to ground, proud boy. And it's very funny.
I don't know if I'd say proud boy.
You'd be surprised some of the banter, but no, I definitely consider myself, I would say, so far down the middle. I'm one of those individuals that definitely believes in social ideas and ideology, but I don't believe in socialist execution. I think that there's it's one of those things where I want to say, yes, we can help everybody and we should help everybody. You should help thy fellow man. It all just comes down to how do we do it and how do we do it safely and how do we do it correctly? And unfortunately, it seems that no one on earth yet has figured out how to do that. So hopefully one day our great nation might be able to solve that problem. And if it was up to me, I think that problem just resolves in legalizing marijuana and heavily taxing it. But unfortunately, that is not the answer to everything, believe it or not.
We're doing it in Illinois, man. I'm telling you.
They're doing it.
Yeah, as you can see. One of these days, hopefully, it'll happen to the great state of Missouri, but I am a National Guard soldier, so I will not be partaking in the abundance of any kind of THC for the foreseeable future or growing out a beard as my co-host and friend Travis is now
Canadians,
able to
they
do.
let their military, they can smoke weed, they can grow it in their barracks, and they can grow beards.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
I can't make
Canada,
this up.
I am about to be.
They have a limit of like one plant per room. I can't make this up.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Huh. I think I need a maple leaf on my sleeve. That's
Well,
what I'm hearing.
I'll tell you what, we're taxing marijuana at over a rate of 100%. I can tell you that because we actually have a manufacturing plant out in Barry, Illinois, which is about 15 minutes from me. And
no wonder you seem so mellow. I think your entire town is just contact high.
Because when it blows downwind, we get a little bit of a contact high. So yeah, but it's definitely an industry here in Illinois.
Huh. Gosh, and everyone was thinking Colorado was the spot. Who'd have thought that Illinois would be the great innovative state?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I go that far, but
aside from my position on the political spectrum, the purpose for me for this podcast is I definitely would like to I don't even know if I would get the word out, but I would definitely like to have people that I think are caught up in one belief take some time to actually listen. And I'm not asking anyone to actually agree with anyone that we bring on this show. And our plan is to bring in guests from all different walks of life. And I plan on throwing a lot of you guys for a loop with some of the guests that we bring on, with some of the diverse backgrounds that they're from. And I'm not asking anyone who listens to this show to have to like what they say, to have to agree with what they say or what they believe. However, I do challenge you as a listener to at least hear what they have to say and why they might feel that way. Because until you walk a day in someone's shoes, and truthfully, as much as easy as that sounds to do, it's something that some of us will never be able to do. So I'm not asking you to agree. I'm not asking you to like anything or anyone that we bring on this show, but I do encourage you to listen and at least try to resonate, even if it's just a little bit, and try to get a new understanding on what it is and where they are coming from as people. Because at the end of the day, whether we like each other or hate each other, we are stuck here on this big old ball of floating gas or land or whatever we are. It's not a scientific podcast, so I won't go on and talking about this lovely flat earth that we live on.
Hey, I know. There's our guy we're going to bring on the next podcast.
If anyone knows a flat earther, send them our way.
Yes.
We have one in Clopton. Come on.
Oh man. And my goal for this podcast at the end of the day is I'm glad that now I finally have someone other than my lovely girlfriend to bore with my political ramblings when I get in the heat of the moment seeing something stupid. Because as much as I think and I know she loves me, I know that she does not care at 8 o'clock on a Monday what I have to say about this or that when it's not something that she cares about. So that's the goal. I know it's going to be fun, and I encourage you guys to bear with us. I will say we are busy individuals, and we're new to this. And so I'm super excited. If you guys stick around and continue to listen to us, you will see us grow as a podcast and as a network. And as we get better at doing the podcast and structuring it better and getting everything right, we really hope to bring you even more content and more interactive things that you guys can do to involve yourselves with the Voice of Reason. And we're definitely going to make this a show that you want to tune into week in and week out, and definitely show your friends and have your grandma listen to it before she kicks rocks. And that way she can die a happy lady knowing that she might have changed her ways. Because I can't say the same thing for my grandma, rest in peace, but she died a grumpy old lady, and that's all right.
And since we're going to do this, we'll do a shameless plug right off the bat, because I know you have it later on. But if you want to ask us questions, Voice of Reason Podcast 2021 at gmail.com, or you can join our page on Facebook, the Voice of Reason Podcast 2021. Share this with others. We would definitely like to get, as of this morning, we're at 165 likes, which is good for our first not even full week. And I'm very excited about that.
Absolutely. Awesome. And eventually we will get Andy on OnlyFans to promote our promotion as well. And so we will be bringing the content to you one way or the other.
Oh God.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Hopefully the podcast grows where the ad revenue is enough that he can be fired for as a teacher for having such things up there. We'll make it work one way or the other.
There we go. There it is. Pray that Larry Logman isn't listening right
now. One day. Mm-hmm. So as we shuffle forward, a segment that we're gonna do a couple different segments on this show. And one that I'm super excited about is Andy is in all rights a paid professional when it comes to being a historian, and definitely knows a thing or two and has taught thousands of students at this point. Well, Clopton's kind of small, maybe only hundreds of students I
actually have done some math on that, and if you figure on over 26 years at an average of 120 students per year, so you do the math on that. What is that? I don't even know, but
this is not a math podcast you're asking me, but we'll say we're over 1,000. Congratulations, Andy Van Beber, on teaching over 1,000 people history.
Yeah.
Well, so with that said, a segment that we're going to bring to this show is this time in history, where Andy's going to go back and actually kind of discuss about some of the similarities between things that we've seen, and whether it's American history or whether he decides to dive as far back as the ancient Egyptians or the Romans, the Greeks, anything that of the craziness that we see today and some of the divide that we might see today, or some of the good. He's going to kind of dissect it a little bit and jump in and bring back some things from the past. And Andy, I'm going to let you take it away from here.
All right. Thank you. And I'm going to ask that anytime that you guys want to jump in, interrupt me, please do, because that's part of this is interaction. We're not going to just I want you guys to be able to ask me anything. But one of the things that we were discussing in our production meeting on Sunday was, talking about where I'd like to go, because we're so quick to forget what we learned in high school. I'll never need that again. But to me, government is my favorite class that I teach, and I have taught it every year that I have, all 26 years. I mean, I've also taught econ, I've taught ancient civilizations, modern world history, current events, U.S. history. But my biggest, I love, and my wife thinks I'm strange for this, but I love politics. And I totally identify with what you said earlier, Sean, about how, I know my wife loves me and like your girlfriend loves you, but don't talk to me about politics. That's her thing. So one of the things that I aside from all the shouting that Travis was talking about on social media, I do look at what people are alarmed at. And one of the things, and I kind of took the pulse last week and kind of took, and everybody's real concern is about executive orders and how many executive orders Joe Biden has done, and uh, how many he's done. All this is he's just making new law and all this other stuff and everything. And so I want to clarify a few things. I checked in with my friends at the American Bar Association, and what we're going to look at, one of the first things I want to talk about before we dive into history, is to look at what an executive order is and what it is not. Okay, what it is. An executive order is a signed, written, published directive from the president that manages the operation of the federal government. They are numbered consecutively. The first executive, they really didn't start keeping the numbers until about 1902, but they are numbered consecutively, and they are published in what's called the Federal Register. Okay, now along that same line, there are also presidential proclamations, which communicate infinite information on holiday like federal observances, flying a flag at half-staff, and trade. And then there are administrative orders, which are signed and used to manage administrative matters of the federal government. All of these, like I said, are published in the Federal Register, which is a daily journal of the federal government. You can go check that out. I believe it's federalregister.gov, I believe is what it is. It is published online now. But executive orders and proclamations have the force of law. Okay. Now, here's what executive orders are not. They are not legislation. We say, well, wait a minute, you just said that they have the force of law. That's correct. But they are not legislation. They require nothing from Congress. But Congress, and this is where a lot of people get confused, Congress can't just overturn them. Okay. Congress can make laws that make it difficult or even impossible for that to carry out. For example, when President Trump pushed for the wall to be built, and of course you had Democrats who slodged around in the whole thing of trying to get funding for it, and you know, and there was, I mean, the opposite party can make it almost impossible for an executive order to be funded. So that's one of the ways. And only a sitting president can overturn an existing executive order of a previous president. We'll get more to that here in a second. Biden is off to a record start. In his first month of office, Joe Biden is number 2 since 1933. He has done 28. Franklin Roosevelt holds the record for 30 in his first month. In the modern era, FDR had 30 in his first month. Biden had 28. Obama had 16. Truman had 13. And Donald Trump had 12. Those are your top 5. The purpose of an executive order, and this is my personal understanding of what I think, a purpose of an executive order is meeting the need of a current crisis or make sweeping changes to meet a situation. Okay. So you go back, you say, okay, well, this must be just a modern thing. Well, no, actually, George Washington's first executive orders involved departments within the executive branch. This was to organize and prepare reports for him. And he also made a presidential proclamation about the first Thanksgiving holiday. Lincoln. Now, everybody thinks that Biden is doing controversial things and, oh my gosh, we've never seen anything like this before and blah, blah, blah. Here's your true history moment of the day right here. Lincoln suspended habeas corpus during the Civil War. Now, for those of you who don't know what habeas corpus is real quick, you cannot just be arrested for no reason and be thrown into jail and just be kept there. Habeas corpus means that you have to be taken by an officer of the court, whether it be police or whoever, a marshal, whoever, and they have to be tell you why you're being charged and why you're being held. During the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln suspended habeas corpus because we were in a state of rebellion. According to the Constitution, you can suspend habeas corpus during a state of rebellion, but this was met with a lot of public outcry. A lot of people question the constitutionality of it. Supreme Court under Chief Justice Roger Taney decided that it was unconstitutional, but here's the beautiful part about it, and this is where it got really controversial. Lincoln ignored it, and Congress did nothing to stop Lincoln. Lincoln's most famous executive order was the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing the slaves. He totally bypassed a divided Congress. He felt that Congress would overrule him, But with the passage of the 13th Amendment, we hedged off a possible controversy. Now, on to the record holder, Franklin Roosevelt, considered to be the most active president, issued here's the thing, guys, think about this. In his 12 years of office, 13 technically, if you count the year of his death, he issued 3,721 executive orders, and President Wilson was the next closest one with 1,803. I mean,
you want to know the crazy thing is, up until recently, I always thought that executive order just stood for the red button that Trump had in office to order a Diet Coke.
Well, see,
so no wonder FDR had all those problems, because he was he drank over 3,000
right
Diet Coke,
and you can't get that, and so yeah. So, but think about this. You guys, okay? Here's your history question for the day, boys. What did FDR come to presidency in the middle of?
Oh my
Come
God.
on.
Great Depression.
Great Depression. There you go. Okay. So people, but here's the thing, and I can relate, because my grandmother, and here's the thing, my grandmother was a dyed-in-the-wool Republican before the Great Depression. When the Great Depression happened, she, along with hundreds of thousands of other Republicans, switched over to Democrat. Why? Because think about this. 30 of these orders, as I said earlier, were issued in the first month. People wanted action. The most controversial executive order that he did was declaring a bank holiday. He said for 3 days, every bank in the United States would be closed for 3 days to check for their financial health. And of course, people were flipping out like, oh my gosh. And he went on the radio that night and said, and he didn't say my fellow Americans, he said, my friends, listen, calm down. I've got this. Okay. But to end this, to kind of wind this down a little bit, it was, and I found this quote on the internet. It was from Chief Justice Robert Jackson, 1952, that truly set the tone for executive orders and what their scope should be. He said the president's powers were at their height when the president had the direct or implied authorization of Congress to act. At their middle ground, he called it the zone of twilight, when he was unsure which branch should act or could act. And at their lowest ebb was when a president acted against the express wishes of Congress and the American people. Many critics have expressed their discontent of the executive orders. I mean, this is what I'm hearing on social media, that we're bypassing Congress, we're bypassing the American people. Okay, fast forward to Joe Biden. I know I'm going a little bit long here, but I want to finish this up right here. Fast forward to Joe Biden. When questioned about his large number of executive orders, Biden responded, this was 2 weeks ago, I'm not creating new law, I'm eliminating bad policy. Okay, and I'm not going to go over, I had written down some of his executive orders, but I mean, a lot of it involved with COVID. The controversial one, revoking the Keystone Pipeline, that was the big one. Okay, and pause energy leasing in the Alaska National Wildlife Reserve. Okay, to ask the Education Department to extend student loan pause, require mask distancing on federal property. These were just some of them. Biden has made it his goal to overturn what he felt was many bad policies of Donald Trump. Donald Trump, many of his policies, when he was in, he wanted to overturn the Obama's policies. Example, leaving the Paris Climate Accords, loosening the restrictions on Obamacare to create a marketplace for insurance. In the end, what executive orders amounts to is the president's meeting the needs that he feels our country has at that time. Many are afraid that, though trying to create an atmosphere of unity in our country, he is creating only more divisiveness with these orders. This, guys, is the nature of politics. This is where I'm at. This is the nature of politics. We can view what Biden is doing one of two ways. We can say what he's doing is wrong, or we can look at them for what they are, a new perspective and a new viewpoint for trying to solve an existing problem. Okay? What's the existing problem? COVID crisis, immigration, environment. It's based on the right given to him by the majority of the people who elected him, which is why we call it democracy. Okay, just like Herbert Hoover had with the Great Depression, Donald Trump had an unfortunate problem that derailed his presidency in the form of COVID.
I thought you were going to say in the form of cocaine, but
well, you know, in the form of, well, I'm sure he probably did some of that on the table, but I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. But here's the thing, and like FDR, Joe Biden is taking an aggressive, even though they're unpopular with some, steps to help fix the issues that rock our country today. And so, to me, that's where I think we're at. We can't look at this like you said. We have to look at this through new lenses, new eyes. So I believe that's enough for me to talk right now. But I could go on, and like I said, I had about another page of notes. But I want people to know that, hey, this isn't something that's new, and it's just unfortunate for those who are on the opposite side.
I think my favorite executive order of all time was a gassed up JFK who told Jackie to shut up and tell Marilyn Monroe to sing him happy birthday.
Mr. President, happy
You know,
birthday.
I want to go back to what you were talking about, V. Social media, it's always, you just read headlines. It's just, links to articles, but majority of people, and I'm guilty of this, we read the headline. We see the headline and we just, because usually the headlines is used to grab your attention, and it's whatever the political agenda is. It's the point is like you got to do your research. Like when I first saw the Biden executive orders, I too was like, oh my God, this is crazy what he's doing. Whether I agree with the things he did or not, I thought, oh my God, that's a lot of executive orders. And then after talking with you, and then I did a little bit more research last night, it's really what he's doing isn't that extreme and crazy like some of these news outlets are making it seem like. Whether you agree with this, these executive orders or not, what he's doing isn't, that out of the, it's not that crazy. Like if you look at history, he's not doing anything that's like.
And I looked down the list here, rejoining the World Health Organization. Okay. I really don't have a problem with that. He created the position of COVID-19 response coordinator. Okay. Rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement. Okay. I think the one that really has people really been out of shape, and there's no good way of looking at it. And if you guys want to go at this, you can, but revoking the Keystone Pipeline. That we have a number. I mean, you guys went to school with a number of pipeliners, guys who are now pipeliners, and I think I'm thinking of one. I'm not going to bring him up on air or anything, but I know one in particular who travels at least 9 months out of the year is on the road traveling, doing pipeline work. It's one of those things where you look at it and say, okay, I'm not getting this. I don't, and this is the one that I don't get. I have it. This is where I'm at with the whole environment thing. I mean, we're to be good stewards of the environment that we're given, but at the same time, being a good steward is also taking advantage of the material that you have given to you. And so, that was one that kind of, but the one that I really stood up and cheered for, and this is probably the only one that I cheered for. He launched an initiative to advance racial equality and end what was called, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this, the 1776 Commission. And for those of us who are, and I'm not going to say I'm a true history teacher, but a true history teacher, I stood up and applaud this. The 1776 Commission was basically launched by Trump to support quote unquote patriotic education. And it was almost extremely so right slanted that it almost made, I won't say it almost did, it made a lot of untrue historic statements about founding fathers, about, totally look past the influence of immigration and how immigrants shaped our country, Black history, and it was really, it really. When I was like, when I first heard about 1776 Commission, this came out 2 years ago, I believe it was. I thought, oh, this will be something cool. Let me look this up, and I started reading it, and just some of the stuff that was being spewed out was like, and I mean, you have yet to find any historical association, like a lot of the groups that I belong to. Nobody's like, okay, this is way out there. So I was really happy to see that the 1776 Commission was nixed. So, but other than that, a lot of other things were pretty harsh for, I guess, the other side. So,
Yes, the 1776 Commission, the the great teachings of how Andrew Jackson actually inspired Mr. Rogers and his program.
Won't you be my neighbor? Oh, by the way, Cherokee Indians, I don't want you to be my neighbor. Please head out west. And here are some blankets, some special blankets that we've prepared for you that have nothing but smallpox in them.
Oh my God. The whole Keystone thing, me personally, I was pretty upset that, I think my biggest issue with it, whether I didn't really agree with the whole decision, but I think my biggest issue was the fact that they had ended it so abruptly. And the only really response to the workers was just, oh, you can go work in energy. Right. Had I seen this being like a 2 or 3 year plan, like a wind down, like, hey, this is going to happen in 2 or 3 years, and we're going to help you guys and give programs to help you transition to a different job. Maybe I think that would have been better. But instead, they just abruptly just said, oh, there goes the, what was it? I don't know what it's called, but basically they just cut it off. And,
one day you have a job and the next day you don't.
The permit, that's the word I was looking for. They
just
cut the permit.
Yes.
Yeah. And, I think that negatively affected our relations with Canada too. I mean, there was a lot of Canadians that were a part of this too, and they all, this.
Well, I mean, they put it. They funded their side of the pipeline. I believe it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it starts in Ontario, is where it originates from. I may be totally off on that, but I'll look that up. But I don't know. Yeah, they have every right to be upset too, because hey, they kicked their money in on it too.
Yeah, I just don't think they took care of the workers in this situation. It was too much of a political agenda, in my opinion. And
it's almost like cutting the head off of a hydra. You think you fix one problem, and then 2 more just grow right back.
Well, and we're going to see that. I mean, everybody thinks the rising gas prices right now are because of that has nothing to do with the Keystone Pipeline. What we're seeing happen, I mean, this is just, well, part of it is the end of fracking of oil. Fracking for oil, which is more environmentally sound than what they're wanting to do. So, I heard today that gas in Eolia peaked over $3 this afternoon. So I was kind of shocked about that.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's the same price here in Chicago. Then that's insane for Eolia. That's crazy.
Well, as we see the rising prices of mini Chicago or Eolia, Missouri, slowly rise. We shuffle on to other different things. And I know that we'll touch more on things like the Keystone Pipeline as more and more comes out from that. And we kind of see the repercussions, the good and the bad. At the end of the day, you could almost say with anything, there's always give and take. And unfortunately, both sides are going to want their half of the rope. So you can't make everyone happy, and we'll just kind of have to see where it goes from there. And this brings me to our next topic, and a section that I'm really looking forward to hearing. That's going to kind of be spearheaded by Travis himself. And this is a section that we like to call What to Watch For. Now, the whole point of this segment and this part of the podcast is Travis is going to address a couple things, whether or not he picked it up reading in the news or if it was trending for a little bit and then kind of got swept under the rug, much like Jeffrey Epstein's suicide. This is going to be kind of some things that could potentially be a big deal or might be a big deal, but we're not hearing anything about it. So without further ado, Travis, take the reins and tell us what to watch for this week.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of craziness going on right now for sure. The thing I've been watching, I've really been watching is the economy and the stock market. The stock market in particular. Let me just say right now, the stock market is extremely overvalued. We are in one of the biggest bubbles, the biggest bubble it's ever been, 100%. And we've talked about eventually we're going to have an episode where we bring a friend of ours, Hank Owens, on. He's a financial advisor for Northwestern Mutual. We're going to talk a little bit about this. But basically, we're in a bubble right now, and we have a stock market driven by stimulus. And let me tell you, that's not going to end well. whatever their plan that they have, it's not going to work. This is going to end eventually. And maybe this is a little bit outrageous to say this, but I truly do think we're going to see a stock market crash either this year or next. I think sooner than later. I really do. I encourage people to really do their research on this and, educate yourself a little bit on this. It's serious stuff. And if you're a new investor, I would say this is not really a time to get in. Don't buy anything at a high, especially right now. But be careful. If you have long-term investments, I would have a serious talk with your financial advisor. And if you're, an aggressive, you got it on a growth portfolio, whatever, I would tone it back a little bit. Look at Tesla, for example. Tesla just absolutely exploded. But if you look at the Tesla's rated production and like where they actually make their money, it doesn't make sense. And then you got, Elon Musk buying Bitcoin, and then talking bad about it after he bought it.
Crazy.
There's that's a perfect example of market manipulation. There is a lot of it. And we got the craziness with, the GameStop short, and it's just absolutely absurd what's going on right now. So pay attention to it. Do your research on what's going on. Like, look up why the stock market's where it's at. Like, it shouldn't be where it's at right now. You got unemployment skyrocketing right now. It's the debt is like $27 trillion right now.
$27 trillion. We just added 1.9 with this proposed stimulus package. We're going to, in the snap of a finger or the signing of a document, it'll be 1.9 trillion added just like that.
Yeah, just quantitative easing, which we're going to talk about a little bit more about that in a later episode. But yeah, just I would really pay attention to that. A lot of people, there's like, I don't care about the stock market, but yeah, I think you should pay attention to it. It's pretty scary stuff that's going on right now.
I read somewhere today that Tesla took an 8.5% dive today.
Yeah.
And what was it? Apple, I think I had that written down somewhere. Apple slid 3%, Microsoft 2.7%. And, what do you think, Travis, is when you say overinflated? What do you think is the bit? And I know you said stimulus and everything. What do you think is the biggest? What do you think is the biggest cause of this overinflated market?
Just we're printing all of this money, and the governments, the Treasury, all of them, they're printing money, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but basically we're printing money and we're buying financial assets to raise the price of the stocks to make.
We're encouraging. Well, I'll tell you one thing. We are encouraging. The Fed right now is encouraging borrowing.
Yes.
When you have an interest rate, I actually just took my house off the market today for other reasons, but right now your interest rate for a 15-year loan is at around, if you've got decent credit, 2.5%. That is the banks begging you to take their money. That's the banks begging you to take their money. And I've heard of some. I was talking to one of my buddies who does house flipping for a living, and because he's so financially stout, and he told me he got a 1.9% interest rate. I'm 46 years old, and I've never seen a 1.9% interest rate. That's ridiculous. That's begging for trouble, like you said.
Yeah, and I think another contributing factor too, and we saw this with the GameStop short. I think another reason we're seeing, a rise in like stock market values, there's a rise of retail investors now with apps like Robinhood and Webull and all these other zero commission trading apps. You got a lot of people who were laid off and they were bored. They started learning about stock market. They started buying in with all this stimulus money. So I think that was a contributing factor. But be careful. There's some people that are saying this is when this bubble pops, and it's going to pop. They're talking at least 85, 90% correction. Like that may sound crazy, but if you look at all the money that's been pumped into the stock market, it kind of makes sense. And I think back in March, we only saw what it was like a 40% drop. Mm-hmm. And that was, people were freaking out then.
And during the recession in the early 2000s, we saw, I want to say a 55 to 60% correction. And so
Yeah,
that was, and people lost. I mean, that was that's when the whole .com
the
business.
.com bubble.
Yep. And when it burst, I mean, a lot of people lost their stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, this was serious stuff. Pay attention to it, especially if you have someone who has a Roth IRA or like a 401k. I think you should have a serious talk with whoever your financial advisor is and really start paying attention to this stuff because you could lose a lot. But that's what
Yeah, it's definitely now
kind
is
of
the
what my
time
focus has been
to.
looking out for, and I think whatever is going to happen, it's going to happen sooner than not.
Now is the time to start to learn how to pickle your vegetables right out of the greenhouse because
You got
boy,
it.
oh boy, SpaghettiOs are going to shoot up to a whopping $4 per can. And unfortunately, that's going to be expensive for all
All I
of
will
us. And
say is if you have some cash, start saving up some cash. Get your cash ready.
I will tell you that my 86-year-old father and my 84-year-old stepmother have two 4-foot by 8-foot deep freezes. They have one upright deep freeze, and they have two refrigerators, all packed full to the brim with food, just for just such an occasion.
Yeah. It's
My
some
dad lived
people.
through my dad lived through the Depression before, and so he knew my dad knew what it was to grow up to have nothing, and he's terrified right now.
Yeah. And not to be like a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but this is it's gonna. I think it's gonna happen. Not. I don't think. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of when, and you got to look out for yourself and prepare.
well, I'm glad you said conspiracy theory, Travis, because that brings me to the next topic that I want to
Bring it
speak
on.
about today. So,
Here we go.
Go down the rabbit hole.
Go ahead.
No,
Go ahead. Chase it. Here
Send
we go.
it.
as many of you guys have probably heard while listening to this podcast, I'm definitely not the one that's going to be the subject matter expert when it comes to the serious, but I do know exactly how many Viagra pills JFK did take before he hopped on the back of that convertible in Dallas, Texas. But that is neither here and that is neither there. Today, what I want to talk about is why exactly the United States government decides to hide UFOs from the American public.
Oh my God!
Well,
Sean.
if you listen to Elon
So I
Musk
wanna
on
go
the
back.
Joe Rogan podcast, aliens don't exist.
Yeah, right.
Well, he may be smarter than me and he may have more money than me. However, that doesn't change the fact that I am right about this and Elon is wrong.
Okay. Hit.
Just because he can get to space doesn't mean that I don't believe space can get right here. No, it's a funny situation that we see repeated throughout history, and which is what fascinates me about the whole thing is on a late July evening, many moons ago, in 1947 to be exact, about 40 miles outside of Roswell, New Mexico. The great Roswell incident occurred. Now, what makes me laugh, and the only reason why I bring this up, is the massive lazy cover-up done by the United States government when it came to this incident. Now, was it probably a weather balloon?
Oh,
absolutely. It probably was. I'm going to go out on a limb and say there's a 99.9% chance that it was. However, in order to keep Roswell's very small economy outside of the meth that is cooked there, I will not talk down upon the great citizens of Roswell.
No.
But what is funny to me is if you go back and if you listen to the reports that came out during this time, during this Roswell incident, the United States Air Force, the CIA, the government did this total yo-yo where during press conferences talking about this, when they were asked at first, do you know what this is? They said, yes, this was a weather balloon and this has crashed, and then changed during a broadcast to, you know what? We don't know what this is. And the sole reason of that was because they didn't want to have their secret technology that they were working on their own, whether it was different flights, to be discovered in that area. They wanted people to be suspicious. And then we fast forward all the way to the 21st century, where naval pilots, if you guys haven't seen them, there's these videos, and I'm not talking about TikToks.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the
I
Tic
know
Tac.
which exactly you're talking about.
Yes, and these are videos that have been around for almost a decade now, and they leaked. They were leaked to the public, and the U.S. government completely denied them at first when they were released, and completely disregarded the naval pilots about saying how, yeah, we're not sure what these are, but these are definitely on our radar. This is definitely what we saw, and it's not unlike anything we've ever seen before. And you fast forward to last year, where just very briefly, the United States government decided to release documents that said, yes, this happened. We knew it happened, and we're sorry that we didn't tell you about it back then. So the reason why I bring this up, and the reason why I wanted to talk about conspiracies, is it's not so crazy to think that there are certain things that are discussed behind closed doors that we will never know. Whether or not it has to do with crazy things like UFOs, probably not the case. However, there are things that there's a reason why conspiracy theories exist, and it's partially due to the fact that they're so juicy and that they keep the conversation going whenever you're around people. And unfortunately, we've gotten to a point where almost everything that we talk about in politics is a conspiracy theory. We could rewind, and I know we'll definitely talk about this at a later date, but we could really dive deep into how many people actually think that this election was rigged and how it was all a big conspiracy. And this is not new. You know, this dates back to everything. This dates back to the old Loch Ness monster, and
Bigfoot,
Scotland, and Bigfoot. So I find it very amusing how oftentimes we find ourselves discussing how many conspiracy theories there are when there's just so many more fun ones that can be talked about, let alone why all the way back in ancient Egypt was King Tut anointed at 9 years old. And if it goes to show you what running a government and running a country will do to you, the man died by the time he was 19.
you were paying attention in class. Wow. Thanks, man. Wow.
I can assure you that decade was one wild ride.
Yeah,
So
it was.
before people start hammering down on Joe Biden for slurring all his words, just remember exactly what happens when you are in power, and when you are stressed, crazy things will happen. So
That's right.
So first and foremost, I definitely wanted to thank everyone for listening. Now, what comes next? What is next for the Voice of Reason podcast? And I can tell you there's going to be a couple of different things. As we grow and as you guys grow as listeners amongst us, I am excited to announce that in a couple of weeks, this isn't something that will happen overnight, but eventually we will get this to be a live podcast that you guys can see and actually interact with us live as we stream this on different social media platforms for people to be engaged with. But well, like we've spoken before, we're going to have all kinds of different guests on here from different backgrounds, from different walks of life, and actually, I'm excited to say probably different parts of the globe. I'd love to have big shout out to my friend Firas Salaba, who I've talked to, who lives in Lebanon, and would love to get him on the show.
Yeah, that would be cool.
I miss that guy.
Great guy. So there's all kinds of amazing stuff that we're going to do with this show. So I appreciate your guys' patience. I appreciate you guys listening to us for today. Do not forget, as Mr. V, old Andy said, please like us on Facebook at the Voice of Reason Podcast 2021. If you have any topic that you want us to talk about, whether it's something you saw in the news, something that you just don't know about, and heck, if you want what's a better cleaner, bleach or Dawn dish soap, I'll be more than happy to go on a 20-minute ramble for you. please send any questions that you have to Voice of Reason Podcast 2021 at gmail.com, or send us a message on Facebook, or leave a comment on any post that you see. If you'd like to be a guest, please shoot us a message. Tell us what you'd like to talk about, and we'll definitely see if we can find time to work you into the rotation. I can assure you we will be very, very busy. And once we do have guests here, we'll have them rolling in, and we are ready to pave the yellow brick road for you guys, and hopefully keep you out of Kansas, to be completely honest, because holy cow, does that state suck. But
there goes part of our demographic right there.
All 4 people that live in Kansas that can operate a smartphone.
There you go.
So really quick, I do want to say, at least for myself, next week, Andy, I don't know if you've thought about what you're going to be talking about in this time in history. Have you put any thought into that yet?
I'll get to it. I'm getting there.
Perfect. So I can say my topic next week is I'm going to talk exactly about why Ted Bundy might have been the greatest Republican of all time.
Actually, we are going to be talking about looking at some of the things from Watergate, and you talked about conspiracy theories. I am wanting to talk a little bit, kind of revisit Watergate a little bit, and talk about how that kind of plays into controversy today.
Awesome. How about you, Travis?
I think something, and I was going to talk about it this time, but I didn't do enough research yet. There's some stuff going on in China right now, specifically China and India. And I think that's definitely worth paying attention to. They're very big countries with a very big influence. So I'm going to do a little bit more research on that, and hopefully get a good segment for the listeners next week.
Yep. Awesome.
Sounds awesome. Well, Andy, Travis, any last words for our listeners today?
Hey, thank you guys so much for listening to us, and please tell us about all of your friends, and like us on Facebook.
Yeah, thanks, guys. We'll get better.
All right. Well, you heard it here. My name is Sean Phillips. I'm here with Andy Van Beber and Travis Kirkendall. Thank you so much for listening to the Voice of Reason podcast, and we will see you next week.
Bye, guys.